Hello, welcome back to Cor Deo Online. We're going to take a look at Ephesians chapter 2, verses 1 to 10. And really what I want us to do here is we're looking at a big sentence. Again, Ephesians is kind of unique in this sense that it is made up of these long sentences that Paul wrote. Ephesians 1, 3 to 14 is the longest. And then 1, 15 to 23 is another long one. And here is yet another long one, where Paul is just flowing with the richness of the gospel. Think of what's come before. First of all, in that first half of chapter 1, the Trinity's involvement in our salvation. The Father's chosen us, the Son has redeemed us, the Spirit has sealed us. We're His. And so then Paul prays for the Ephesians, these new believers, that the eyes of their hearts would be opened and that they would be able to know heartfelt knowledge of the hope of their calling, of the inheritance that is His in the saints, of the power that is at work toward them. And we saw at the end of chapter 1 how the power is kind of a four-stage power. It raised Jesus from the dead. It seated Him at the right hand of God. It put everything under His feet and made Him head over the church. That's a kind of a four-stage rocket booster of power, if you like. And here we come into chapter 2, and you'll notice that it just carries right on at the start. It's saying, and we're not going to keep the whole text on the screen. I'll work through it in bits in a moment. But I just want you to notice one thing about this. We've got, I suppose you could call it a sort of a bookend or an inclusio at the beginning and at the end. And it's this word here. He starts off by saying, you were dead in your trespasses and sins in which you once walked. Okay, so the way you used to live is where he starts. But then at the end, he brings back that concept of walking again, the good works which God prepared beforehand that we should walk in them. So he's going to go from the past, how we used to live or walk, to the present, how we now walk. And there's an absolute transformation. And so the question that we could ask ourselves is, what brings that transformation? What brings us from that spiritual death to this new spiritual life that we're living? So let's just walk our way through it and see. He begins quite bleak. Like I said, you were dead in the trespasses and sins. Dead is a strong word, okay? It's not ill, not sick, not weak, not inadequate, not struggling. Dead. You were dead in the trespasses and sins in which you once walked. There it is. Following the course of this world, following the prince of the power of the air. That is the spirit that is now at work in the sons of disobedience. So the sons of disobedience, that is the people of this world. You were right there. You were part of it. In fact, we all were. He says, we all once lived among these people. And what's the definition, or what's the characteristic of these people following the prince of the power of the air, the spirit at work? That's referring to Satan, of course. But what's the characteristic? Well, there's this reference here to the passions of our flesh, carrying out the desires of the body and the mind. We were by nature children of wrath like the rest of mankind. It's an incredibly bleak reality. And so in terms of status, maybe not the best word, but in terms of where we were at spiritually, we're dead. Dead towards God, absolutely dead. And yet we were active. It wasn't that we were dead bodies, we were dead spiritually, but physically we were driven along by the passions of our flesh, the desires of the body and the mind, following the prince of the power of the air. That's an incredibly bleak situation. That's the bad news, right? So let's look at the good news. And it is so good. It starts with just a little connecting word there, but God. Notice how God is described being rich in mercy because of the great love with which He loved us. Isn't that an amazing thought? God loved us. Even when we were dead in our trespasses, He made us alive together with Christ. Now, the fact that He did that, even when we were still absolutely lost, absolutely dead, that triggers the thought that He kind of gives as an explanation here. By grace you have been saved. And What else has he done? Well, he's raised us up with him and seated us with him in the heavenly places in Christ Jesus. Notice the sequence of familiar terms here. Remember the power of God that is toward us who believe in chapter 1. It's the same power that raised Jesus from the dead and seated him. And here we've got that same sequence, raised us and seated us. And it's with him. The beautiful kind of continuation from chapter 1. We're seated with him in the heavenly places in Christ Jesus, so that, here comes the purpose, if you like, the goal of God's rich mercy and great love, so that in the coming ages he might show the immeasurable riches of his grace in kindness toward us in Christ Jesus. It's really a beautiful few verses, isn't it? Just the richness of this. Dane Ortland, in his book, talks about God being rich in mercy, a unique phrase. We don't expect mercy to be the thing that he's wealthy in. We maybe expect being rich in power or rich in wealth or rich in, possessions or something. But no, being rich in mercy, his great love with which he loved us, the immeasurable riches of his grace and kindness. There's an abundance to the grace, the mercy, the love of God. This is really at the core of the character of our God, that he is that kind of a God toward us when we absolutely didn't deserve it, which is why he can say here, by grace you have been saved. It's all toward us in Christ Jesus. So there's a richness to this gospel. So then following on from that then, here's the by grace again, for by grace you have been saved through faith. This is not your own doing, it is the gift of God, reinforcing the fact that this is God's kindness towards us. It's not a result of works. Our human nature will try to take credit, but no, it's not a result of works, so that no one may boast. And so he comes to his conclusion, for we are his workmanship. He's done this. It's his work, not ours. And we're created in Christ Jesus for good works, which God prepared beforehand. It was always his plan that we should walk in them. So there's the transformation from how we used to walk to how we now walk. And the transformation is absolutely nothing to do with us fixing ourselves, turning over a new leaf, making a resolution, putting things right. Not at all. It's all by grace. It's the goodness, the richness of God's mercy and love and grace towards us that has made this transformation possible. There's a lot more we could say, but I think we need to dwell on that. We need to think about just how amazing the gospel is, just how wonderful the character of God. Think about that. We tend to read a passage like this and understandably think about it from our perspective. Wow, I've been so blessed. But what is the source of the blessing that I receive in salvation? The real source of it? It's not an act of God. It's the heart of God. It's the character of God overflowing. The thing that he's done for us in Jesus, the thing that he's done for us by his Spirit, what he's done for us in the gospel, is he's spilled over his own richness, the richness of his mercy, his great love, his astonishingly wonderful grace. It's the character of God that is the source of our salvation. Thank you so much for joining us. We're not going to say any more, although there's so much more we could say. But please do check out more resources from Cor Deo Online on the YouTube channel. Thank you.